Shalom Temple Israel. As you can probably see from the surroundings around me, I am not in Temple Israel, not in my office, and not in my usual video spot. I am here with my colleague, Rabbi Yossi Groner, at Congregation Or HaTorah, and we're here to talk about the Jewish calendar, the holiday coming up this week of Lag BaOmer. First, Rabbi Groner, thank you so much for coming in my weekly video. I'd like to use these videos as a chance to get to know some of my neighbors, so I really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure.
And just kind of an introductory question. When I hear people talking about this building on Sardis, I hear some people say Chabad, I hear some people say Congregation Or HaTorah. Is there a difference? Are they the same thing?
Well, Chabad is the parent organization of Or HaTorah, so the campus is really the Chabad Center, the Epstein Family Chabad Center. But one of our organizations of Chabad is our synagogue, which is an Orthodox synagogue, and that is called Congregation Or HaTorah. It has its separate board and separate structure.
Got it, thank you. And how long have you been in Charlotte?
40 years.
For a little bit, 39 years longer than I have. Something to aspire to.
Well, it's amazing to see the community grow in an exponential manner, both in the quantitative way, but even more so in the qualitative way. So it's almost impossible to compare what we have today to what we were 40 years ago. So the community has really blossomed and flourished, and it's been very receiving and accepting, and I still see future growth in our community.
I'm counting on that and look forward to being part of that growth. So we're here to talk about Lag BaOmer. At Temple Israel, we actually count the Omer on Facebook each night. One of the clergy gives a little teaching about the Kabbalistic Sfirot, particular for that day, and we recite the bracha and count the day at sundown. So we've alternated between our clergy. And this Thursday, our men's club is holding a bonfire for Lag BaOmer. It's going to be a great event, and our youth group is doing a s'mores event. You can get the campfire. The camp theme is big on Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer, but it has more significance than being just being another day. And I was hoping you could teach a little bit about the significance of Lag BaOmer.
Yes, thank you. So there are two actual aspects that express what Lag BaOmer is, and they both go back to the Mishnaic time of the Talmud, and it affects a rabbi and his student who eventually became a rabbi. The first one is Rabbi Akiva, who's well known. And Rabbi Akiva is mostly known for one of his statements that he made, and that is that the verse in the Torah that we read last week, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself, is a great principle in the Torah. And one of the reasons that he said it is because he amassed 24,000 students who were all great scholars, but each one believed that their path and their perception of the service of God is the correct one, and they were trying to influence the others to follow their way. And as it says in the Talmud, Lo nahagu b'kavod zel zeh, they did not conduct themselves respectfully one to each other, and a great plague befell that community of students. And according to the Talmudic version, those 24,000 students all passed away in a very short period of time during the counting of the Omer. And for that reason, we don't have weddings during the Omer, except on Lag BaOmer. There are many restrictions that we find in the Code of Jewish Law during the days of the Omer, but the plague stopped on Lag BaOmer. So that was one reason why Lag BaOmer became a holiday, but there is a greater reason, and that's the reason actually that you see how it's observed in Israel with bonfires all over the country. And that has to do with an eventual student of Rabbi Akiva by the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, also known in the acronym of Rashbi. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was also a great Talmudic scholar, author of the Mishnah, just like Rabbi Akiva. However, he also revealed the esoteric and mystical side, or mystical part of the Torah. And it's very much connected to Lag BaOmer, because if you take the word Lag, which literally is Lamed Gimel, which means 33, and you put the Gimel before the 30, before the Lamed, you have the word Gal. And Gal is a verse in Tehillim which says, Gal einai va'abita niflaotecha. Reveal and open up my eyes so I should be able to glance and see your great wonders. And that was the mission of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to reveal the mystical side of the Torah. And that actually, the fact that this became his day and the day that he passed away, and the Zohar describes his passing in a phenomenal way, as I will mention in a moment. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, before he passed away, said, "This is the day of my rejoicing, because on this day I will bond with God in such a way that I have never bonded with God until now. And therefore it's a happy day for me, and I ask all my students to rejoice in my joy." And thus it became a very, very happy day.
Now you talk about this story from the Talmud, I think it's Yevamot, about the plague that wiped out 24,000 pairs of Rabbi Akiva's students. And it was hard to relate to that story most of the years that I've heard it. And then all of a sudden last year, right in the Omer period, we're suddenly talking about a plague that's killing thousands of people. I think maybe Lag BaOmer took on some increased significance, certainly some increased prayers for me last year, wishing it would stop. Glad that this Lag BaOmer we're in a much more positive place.
Absolutely.
And you talked about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his teaching of and the Zohar, the foundational work of Jewish mysticism. Is that a book that you study at all?
So we study pieces of it, and I want to go just in general to describe the mystical aspect. The Zohar is known as the Book of Splendor, which is attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There are other books of Kabbalah as well, the Sefer Yetzirah, and similar Sfarim, similar books that were written in that time. But the Zohar has its own life, which led to the development of Kabbalah until today. But I want to talk a little bit about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, why he is so celebrated, and what the revolution that he brought about in Jewish thinking, in Jewish theology, which is lasting until today. And that starts, let me just give you a little comparison. We celebrate Moses, because Moses was the one that received the Torah and revealed the Torah to the world. Moses was involved in revealing mostly the body of the Torah, the laws of the Torah, the traditions of the Torah, the philosophy of the Torah. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who according to Kabbalah was the reincarnation of the soul of Moshe, by the way, he revealed the soul of the Torah. What does it mean, the body and the soul? Everything in the world has an internal aspect and an external aspect. And most of us get carried away and we get focused on the external, and we sort of don't focus on the internal. So people go to work so they can make money. That's external. Why do they need the money? So that they can feed their family. Why do they need to feed their family? Because that's the obligation that they have, and they want to see their family happy. So ultimately, the inner desire, the inner aspect of going to work is not to make money. The inner aspect of work is to have a happy, healthy family. Similarly, if someone goes out to the beach or to the ocean, even if they take a boat and a ship and they sail in the ocean, and they're enamored with the splendor and the beauty of nature, and they see the dolphins come up, and sometimes they'll go whale watching, or they will see the waves, and they're just taken by it. But as much as that is beautiful and as much as that is revealing, it doesn't compare to those that go deep sea diving. And when they go deep sea diving, they see all marine life that opens up for them in this most colorful way, which is unimaginable standing on the seashores or even being on a ship. Similarly, when it comes to Torah, there's the beauty that Torah has and the satisfaction that Torah gives, but that pales in comparison to the inner aspect of the Torah once you start revealing it. And that was always hidden from the masses. The first one to start revealing it and saying that it's a mitzvah to actually delve into it and take a little bit of that was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And by divine providence, he passed away on Lag BaOmer, which is connected to that concept of Gal, of revelation. And the phenomenal passing, as it's described in the Zohar, was that he assembled his close students and he told them, I will reveal to you today the mystical secrets of the Torah like I've never done before. And in the middle of his teaching, it says that a pillar of fire came down from heaven and surrounded his bed, and it was dancing around his bed. And when he came to the word Chaim, which means life, the pillar lifted itself, and with that, the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also ascended to heaven. And for that reason, his students not only celebrated, but they also, to memorialize this kind of passing that he had, they would build fires, and thus became the tradition of having bonfires. And in Israel especially, because the Sephardic community has always been more prone to at least look at Kabbalah or recite verses of Kabbalah and Zohar, and they've inserted it in the liturgy of their prayers. So for that reason, they bonded with Rav Shimon Bar Yochai a little bit more than the Ashkenazim did, until now, when now it's become the possession of the entire Jewish community.
And did that story take place in Meron, or was Meron where he lived?
Meron is not where he lived, but they say Meron is where he hid, and for that reason they took him to Meron to be buried there. Until today, there is a pilgrimage. I don't know, last year they didn't allow people to go because of the pandemic. This year they might allow limited groups, but for that reason there was a tradition of hundreds of thousands of people flocking there, singing and dancing. The idea of Yom Simchato, he said, is the day of rejoicing. But it wasn't just to celebrate the past. It is actually a mandate for us, because when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is recite Moda'ani, which means we're offering our thanks to God for restoring our soul, which is the pnimi, which is the inner aspect of our life, and connecting with it. And we realize that every day we have a mission, and we are privileged to fulfill that mission. So it's all about the bond, it's all about the connection.
Got it. And I want to go back to what you said about the relationship between Moshe and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Torah and the Zohar and Kabbalah and the mysticism. We're getting a little bit inside baseball here for many people. It's a topic for a larger conversation, but the relationship between those types of texts, of genres, I've always thought is similar to being halakha and agadah. Halakha is very dry law. This is how we do things, this is how we don't do things. And agadah provides kind of the underlying rationale for the way Agadah, Jewish legend, the stories contained in the Talmud, the non-legal portions of Jewish tradition, and animate the law. Yeah,
what you're saying is 100% correct. The masters of Kabbalah have said that the Agadah, or the Agadata as it's called in the vernacular, it actually contains all the secrets of the Torah. However, when you study the Agadah, again, all it is stories. What Rav Shimon Bar Yochai did was he lifted the veil to be able to study the more abstract concepts. The Arizal, who also lived in Israel and lived in Tzfat, not far from Meron, wrote Mitzvah legalot zot hachachma, that today it's a mitzvah to reveal this wisdom. And there were two reasons why he said this wisdom has to be revealed. Number one, as time was progressing, challenges to Judaism were getting stronger and more obvious, so we need to have more resources. The second thing is that ultimately, Judaism believes that we're spiraling upwards. There's always going to be a better world. The concept of the coming of Mashiach is not only the redemption of the Jewish people, it's the entire world will be lifted to a better place. And what will happen at that time, in addition to the physical greatness of life that will be revealed, more than that will be the mystical side of life that will be revealed. And in order to prepare ourselves for it, we need to study the Pnimiut Torah. So the truth of the matter is that even in the time of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and his successors, it was still in the abstract. And it was beyond reach for most people. In later generations, especially since the advent of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, and then Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, their goal was to take it out of the realm of the abstract and bring it into the realm of logic and understanding, to be able to actually internalize the concepts in a logical way.
And just to elaborate on what Rabbi Groner said, the people you mentioned, the Baal Shem Tov and Shneur Zalman of Liadi, are the first and the third generations of Chassidut, if I remember correctly, of Chabad, and Shneur Zalman of Liadi is the founder of the Chabad dynasty.
And the word Chabad, by the way, is an acronym of the three intellectual faculties within the human mind. Chachma, which is wisdom, Bina is comprehension, and Dat is knowledge. And what was he talking about? He wasn't just talking about Talmud and the body of Torah, he was talking about the soul of Torah, that we should be able to apply the Chabad to the abstract concepts of Torah to be able to internalize it and understand the essence of life and the essence of Torah through mysticism. So for that reason, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because he was sort of like the first one to break through the barrier and to reveal it and live that life, actually he is celebrated for that because he broke through a barrier that was unimaginable. In fact, the Gemara in Chagiga says that people should not study the Kabbalah, and then it says that 4 people entered into the orchard and only one came out peacefully, and that was Rabbi Akiva, his teacher. Nichnas b'shalom v'yatsa b'shalom. He entered in peace and he exited in peace. So the Mishnah itself cautioned its students and its adherents from actually delving into it unless you had a teacher. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai took it to the next step.
And he applied it, and he enabled Jews to study mysticism. To really
he enabled
enter
Jews
the
to study
pardes.
mysticism, and it's very relevant to our lives. It gives a whole different meaning, because when you see world events, you just don't judge it on its surface or the way it appears. You actually delve into the depth and understand how it actually reveals the aspect of creation and the plan of God. So it's an amazing way of understanding Judaism. Adin Steinsaltz, who was a rabbi that passed away recently, said that Kabbalah is the theology of Judaism. So to answer what you just said before, yes, it's in the Agadah, but it's still hidden in the Agadah. We did a class here with the JLI once, and that was demystifying the zany stories of the Talmud, because they do seem out of reach, and we don't understand why these intellectual great scholars were engaging in telling us these stories, but really they were hidden codes for something much deeper. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gave us the tools with which to be able to decode that and to be able to reveal what's really beneath it.
Interesting. I know we could keep going back and forth on this and hopefully it's the first of many discussions we're able to have on this, but I want to thank you very much for teaching us about Lag BaOmer and teaching us a little bit about Jewish mysticism. More than I expected, but it was very interesting, and thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and I'd like to welcome everybody to come and visit and see our new building and see the sanctuary and partake, and hopefully we can have a very good relationship coming forth.
Conclude by going back to the story of Rabbi Akiva and his students, and you quoted the traditional reason given for the plague is they didn't treat each other with mutual respect, and I hope that we all know that little secret that Jewish communities don't always have mutual respect between different organizations, different rabbis, and I hope that we'll always be able to interact like this and engage and actually talk about Torah, the things that we love and share. So thank you, Rabbi.
Very well, I'm with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.